AEW had quite the week. Professional wrestling had all its eyes and still does, and this continuation of an amazing week. AEW set and wants to stick to not the amount of people that were in Wembley Stadium this past week, but the amount of people that paid to be there, because that's a mark that they wanted to try to reach. 101,000 is essentially the mark, if you don't count North Korea's show back in the 90s, the mark to beat for overall attendance. But AEW knew they probably couldn't beat that mark, and more importantly, thinks because they are a bunch of marks at AEW. No, offense, no trying to hurt anybody's feelings, but they want to do something that other companies aren't doing, and that is putting out the paid figure. And Tony Khan said after the show that this was, without a doubt, hands down, the biggest show in wrestling history. And I just want to say, really quick, kind of related to all that stuff and all that bickering back and forth about, whether this is the biggest show in wrestling history or not. I want to say, and I've said it before, WrestleMania 36, WrestleMania 2020, the COVID WrestleMania, to me, we've done videos on it, we've talked about it before, is not a WrestleMania because, in my opinion, shows are more than just one thing. To be something, you have to be more than just one thing. If you want to say this is the biggest, AKA because of attendance, yes, then this is, quote unquote, the biggest paid attendance. It is. That's a fact, okay? But there's so many facets to make something the biggest wrestling show overall, all around. It's attendance, it's presentation, it's more than that. And to me, I still am going to hold probably WrestleMania 3 to that regard. Even though WrestleMania 3 is now 4, 5, 6 on the line when it comes to this attendance mark, paid attendance, I'm going to hold that as the biggest wrestling event because it was both the crowd mixed with where wrestling was at the time, mixed with the match, mixed with the first time a stadium like that had ever even come close. I mean, I think they've run maybe 40, 50,000 attendance in the past, but nothing obviously under a banner of a pay-per-view. So the perfect storm of WrestleMania 3 is kind of why I'm going to hold that to be the biggest wrestling show of all time. Biggest by attendance? Absolutely. But I will say one thing. If AEW truly believed that this was the biggest wrestling show of all time, then can somebody please explain to me why they're not doing that and they're not treating it as the biggest wrestling show of all time? Because one thing that this did not have, that AEW's All Out is about to have, is multiple nights of AEW being in town, right? FanFest, StarCast, all the things that go along with making this a big event. If 200,000 people went to a regular season NFL football game, that would not make it the biggest NFL football game of all time over the Super Bowl, because the Super Bowl may have a little bit less of a crowd, but it has all the other things going forward. And I personally, before we get into talking about cards, I think the All In card is better than the All Out card. But if WWE was presenting the biggest wrestling show of all time, they probably wouldn't be putting a pay-per-view on the week after it. They probably wouldn't be putting the Access Fan Fest meet and greets and all that on the pay-per-view after it. They probably wouldn't be putting all the extracurricular shows like the Raws and SmackDowns on the pay-per-view after it. They probably wouldn't be coming into town for the weekend and heading off as soon as they can because they got a pay-per-view the week after it. That's what AEW is doing here. I hope next year when All In comes back to Wembley Stadium, it's not bookended by another pay-per-view. It's treated much bigger. It's built up without any further pay-per-view tickets or promotions being sold, and the focus being on that. But I will say quickly that AEW All In, I'll give them the credit that presentation, I want to say spot on with probably some WrestleManias. WrestleMania 35 to mind, we know that had the crappiest, blank, boringest entrance. So, I mean, presentation-wise, definitely. Was MJF versus Adam Cole the most anticipated wrestling match of our generation? No. And I think even though it was a good match, I'm not – that's, MJF and Adam Cole, it's not Andre Hogan. It's not Hogan Rock. It's not Cena Rock. It's not that. It's not that.
But I'll be honest with you, it delivered. That show delivered to me.
I did deliver.
Here's the thing, dude. I'm looking at the card for coming up here for All Out. I would debate that. I would say I don't think that card is any better than All In.
It's not. And it's suffering from the fact that All In was last week. All Out is essentially, I mean, we saw this with WWE during 2020 when they had Payback 1 week after SummerSlam. And I feel like Payback was kind of created specifically in 2020 to kind of crown Roman Reigns and kind of be like a SummerSlam plus, if you will. But I don't think All Out is created like that. All Out seems like it's a Dynamite card. I mean, I feel like AEW Grand Slam has probably got a better card than this. And again, because they had all of their big built-up matches into Wembley. And that's the fault of AEW.
Here's the issue that I have with wrestling fans. I'm going to go back to your earlier point about this whole attendance, paid attendance thing. I'm just going to say it one more time. Who the hell cares? To me, it was a good show. They put on, they filled the stands. It was a good show, good card. You know, the fans were involved. To me, it was just a great time to be. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. I thought that, you know, we'll get into the matches, but I thought I was pleasantly surprised with, you know, my expectations for the matches going in. I was like, okay, it's going to be a decent pay-per-view. But to me, this card, you know, with all the matches, because we've already seen it. We saw the results. We watched the matches. To me, it was good as advertised, and kudos to AEW because they put on a hell of a show, and it was I watched the entire thing from start to finish. It was one hell of a show, and I'm ready for more.
I mean, if All In, the original one, was the essentially indie equivalent of, you know, WWE competition, right? This is the indie equivalent of WrestleMania. This is independent wrestling's answer to WrestleMania, where it's the WrestleMania presentation, which it did. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, the presentation wasn't, you know, the greatest WrestleMania stage or anything wasn't the roller coaster in Orlando or anything like that. But we've seen some crappy WrestleMania stages, so I'm not going to fault AEW on any of that. Obviously, with the fireworks over the stadium and all that, this was WrestleMania for wrestling fans who don't want to see Snooki. For people who want to watch wrestling and not watch the celebrity / wrestling, this was it. I just wish AEW would have not done the things like book a pay-per-view 1 week after it, in which is essentially a more, you know, standard pay-per-view. Because All In, this was the second All In ever, the first ever under AEW. All Out is what is essentially their WrestleMania. So it'd be like if WWE booked Elimination Chamber in a stadium in Wembley, first time to London, biggest crowd ever, huge card, and then booked WrestleMania to be the crappy show next week in an arena. Like, it doesn't make any sense. All Out is the bigger name. They should have just made this All Out. This year, All Out, there's an AEW All Out every single year. I think this is, what, the 5th or 6th All Out since the invention of AEW. They should have just made it in Wembley. Like, WWE was smart this year and put Money in the Bank in London. They didn't create another pay-per-view a week earlier like this India thing. This India thing is a bona fide house show. This isn't a big event. They're not putting, you know, Payback in India or Fastlane in India. They're just putting a show that's going to go on at the same time as SmackDown with non-SmackDown wrestlers. It's a house show. It's a bona fide house show. It's not even going to be on the network. I mean, so WWE was smart in putting Money in the Bank, taking an existing pay-per-view and bringing it to London and putting it a part of their card. AEW shouldn't have made this special London show. They should have just assimilated into the card so they didn't have to have this smorgasbord of nonsense that Dynamite this week.
Speaking of nonsense, by the way, what do you make of this nonsense between CM Punk, Jungle Boy, or Jack Perry, and then obviously the whole Tony Khan dynamic? I got to get your thoughts on this because it's crazy.
CM Punk, I mean, if you were riding the London Underground or the Tube this past week, I've been there, and when I was there, I did not run into CM Punk, but some fans obviously did because that was CM Punk's first annoyance, that when he arrived, he didn't have proper accommodations. But, you know, listen, I've always been a CM Punk fan when it comes to his in-ring stuff and when it comes to his realism, again, in-ring promos. But I think, you know, him and Jungle Boy, from what I'm hearing, or Jack Perry are suspended. It's just nonsense. CM Punk, what was it? Somebody had a sign this past week that said it perfectly when they do the whole, you know, no flips sign. It said no flips. What's the sign?
I know what you're talking about. Wasn't it like all whining or something? It was something like, it was a cheap shot, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, no flips, all fits. That's
all
what
fits.
it is.
There you go.
Because that's what it is. I mean, with CM Punk, I feel like, you know what they should have done this week after this. This should have been one of those. I wish wrestling in the world did this more often. Tony Khan's probably more apt to do this because he's got his heart to the pulse of changing things more often when it comes to the world of wrestling. When you do things, when Stone Cold Steve Austin breaks his neck, there should be a way to call an audible, knowing that he's going to be out. He's out. Whatever the best case solution is, he's out. Let's get the belt off him right now. And CM Punk, when you have this stuff before this match, this would have been a great time to call an audible. Put the belt on Samoa Joe, because you knew that there's a good chance that after this he's going to be suspended or fired. Well,
the timing's not great because they're in Punk's hometown, so that's,
and he's not going to be there.
Yeah. Well, that's the crazy thing. Like this, like to me, like ever since CM Punk has arrived in AEW, I don't feel like the return on investment from like just like a culture, I feel like has not, I don't think he's delivered in that aspect. Sure, the financials, which I love, obviously we know that. Sure, he's made money, he made some good money for AEW, but like, is it really worth the headache? Because I feel like just over a year ago he had the scrum with the Elite. Like it's like come on, like we're grown adults here. Why don't we act like professionals? And from what reports that I was seeing out there, like we weren't obviously there, but it sounded like Samoa Joe had to break it up, is what I read. So I'm like I wouldn't want to tick off Samoa Joe. He'll put you out pretty cold, pretty quick. So to me, I'm a little frustrated with the whole CM Punk thing. Like it took away from an otherwise really good show because that stuff came out. It's just, to me, like, let's focus on the great wrestling that we had. And to be honest with you, I didn't really care for that CM Punk Samoa Joe match anyways. I thought it was kind of blah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I mean, it was cool seeing CM Punk and his entrance and Samoa Joe having entrances in front of such crowds. It's cool seeing these people who clearly have never been. I mean, Samoa Joe's been a part of WrestleMania, and so is CM Punk. But it is also cool because it's London, right? So like it is WrestleMania essentially in London. So seeing them, like the fans there who probably have never seen a lot of these guys. Unlike WWE, right? There's a lot of AEW guys they've never seen. CM Punk might be somebody that they've never seen before. I know he did some WWE tours, but Samoa Joe, that somebody they might have never seen. They're few and far between. But I guess I'll ask you quickly, so because there's too many cards obviously to be talking about here. We'll just start with All In, 3 matches wrestling wise, big 3 takeaways, 3 things you really enjoyed by All In.
All right, so I'm going to start where the show ended, and that is our main event, which was Adam Cole and MJF for the championship, for the AEW World Championship. That match to me checked all of the boxes that I look for as a wrestling fan. They put on the technical skills were there. They told great stories. There was a lot of MJF was kind of like, oh, do I hit him with this? Do I hit him with that? Like there was like all these second thoughts going on, and the same thing with Adam Cole. Like the storytelling was just flawless. I thought they did it right, and it was just under 30 minutes, so I think they did a really good job of it. And what I will take away from MJF and Adam Cole is they're friends. Like, I thought there was going to be a turn there. I saw Roderick Strong come out, and I thought, okay, here we go, and let's see what happens here. But no, like they got up and they walked away together at the end of the show. So that to me was the highlight of the night. I also, to me, and the match was good too, but the moment where the House of Black did a little tribute to Bray Wyatt, that got me pretty good. I was in my feels for a second because that was and of course it had to be the House of Black because they're a similar style character, so it fit the bill. So I love the tribute there. And then obviously the tag match between the FTR and the Bucks. I mean, what else can you say? I mean, every time those guys go out, I feel like they're always just on their game. Their chemistry in the ring is awesome. They tell great stories. It's just overall, it was a lot of fun. So I enjoyed pretty much every match on the card. I thought every match served a purpose in a good way. I thought everything, it flowed. I thought it was the length of the pay-per-view I thought was appropriate for the kind of show it was. So I was completely okay with how things played out. And one last thing, I'm just going to say this. I called it last week when Adam Cole and MJF won the Ring of Honor tag belts. And then at the end of the night, they walked out with said tag belts. So I just want to say I'm going to pat myself on the back on that one because
Well, they weren't going to they weren't going to lose the belts. They won the belts, but yes, they were obviously going to walk out either way.
Yeah.
Obviously that contention there at the end was pretty cool. Some of my takeaways, we're going to stay a lot of like English-based stuff here, obviously in front of this London crowd. A match under 10 minutes on a pay-per-view in AEW, it's really rare. But Saraya winning the women's championship in England. I mean, I thought that was a really cool moment. 8 minutes and 50 seconds was that match, which is crazy under AEW standards to not be 45 minutes long, if you will. Yeah. But seriously, that was a cool moment. And obviously going on to the men's side of the hometown person, going to go Will Ospreay. I thought him defeating Chris Jericho was, a big step in his career. It reminded me a lot of some stuff we see obviously in the Wrestle Kingdom world. But Will Ospreay, getting to be in front of such a large crowd. Because remember, he's not been in WWE ever. He's been in Wrestle Kingdom and New Japan and big crowds there. But this was his chance to be in front of this many people in his home country for the first time ever. I want to say if he wrestled in front of 25,000, that would be the biggest crowd that he's ever wrestled in front of in England. So that was really cool for him to be able to wrestle in front of this huge crowd in his home country.
Didn't disappoint.
And then get the win, and then near the end to be one of the semi-main events. And the Stadium Stampede match, I thought that delivered. That's entertaining. It's one of the matches on the night that kind of wasn't just the straight wrestling matches, where we got to have that uniqueness, kind of like I said, WrestleMania feel, if you will, because it had a different element. It wasn't just two guys in a ring putting on a great technical wrestling match. It was that all-out chaos. They were up in the luxury suites. They're on the concourse. I thought that was really cool. And
what did you make of that match though? Like some of the spots, like there's that one spot where Moxley like had the stuff sticking out of his head, like that. Like what did you make of all that?
That's the new. I mean, I don't want to say new. I don't want to show people that that's been going on forever and ever and ever. But fad wise, it's definitely one of the hot things to do if you're trying to show yourself to be hardcore. It's to sticking the skewers in your head kind of thing, or getting them hammered into your head. Spots like that are cool. And I just think Moxley's personality and the way he wrestles is perfectly fit for these Stadium Stampedes. I think him one-on-one with somebody in a Stadium Stampede match would be entertaining without the whole group of people. And I obviously thought, best friends, Eddie Kingston and Orange Cassidy kind of winning, and Penta El Zoro winning this match kind of leaves, the fact that there's more to be determined, in the sense of, those guys winning. Because it's not necessarily the bad guys winning, because it's not, but, it's the Blackpool Combat Club essentially, wanting more. So obviously we know before we preview All Out, kind of leading. It was one of those kind of matches that felt like, that Elimination Chamber before WrestleMania kind of, we're going to have this match going to be really cool, but it's going to lead to more things down the road. Obviously MJF and Adam Cole is going to lead to more things down the road. I don't know if AEW is smart. Now here's a question I guess we'll ask you as we move away from All In and we move kind of to All Out. Is AEW smart or not smart by essentially not having the Adam Cole MJF rematch at All Out? I mean, is it good for that they're waiting this out? We're going to give this some breathing room, or do you think that should have been the whole point of this, is to immediately go from one to the other?
No, I think it's great the way they're doing it. I think you got to let it. It's like a good sauce. You got to let it simmer a little bit. And with how things played out in the main event this past weekend in London, to me, it's good that they're simmering this sauce out, so to speak. They're building this up. They're making it so cool because right now they're the best of friends. Like they put on a good match, they kicked the crap out of each other, literally and figuratively. But at the end of the night, they walked out together. They were cool. Like everything was good. And to me, I think it's great because now you can change gears and they can focus on being, tag champions for right now. And here's what's going to happen. We can already see it. Like it's going to be fun to see how it plays out. But eventually, they're going to kick ass for a while. I think that's the plan. And then over time, you're going to see kind of like a Judgment Day in WWE where they're going to start planting little seeds of doubt.
Yeah,
like, oh boy, they're going to let that grow, and then eventually, I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later, unless MJF has a new contract, because obviously we all know the bidding war of 2024 supposedly is coming up here. So they may have to do this. They may have to transition if he's leaving to WWE. He could he could drop the belt to Adam Cole and then leave town and go to WWE potentially if the contract isn't done. Because there are rumors out there, rumors, innuendo, that say that MJF has already locked up a contract, but it just hasn't been publicly known yet.
Well, the reason I say this is because we move into All Out. This is the 5th annual AEW All Out event, which is more of a historical, traditional event on the AEW calendar. And I'm looking at it right now, and I said as the start, of talking about this, and I'll continue to say, I've seen better AEW Fighter Fest. I've seen better AEW Dynamite specials. And I'm looking at this card right now, and I'll ask you the question, if you're looking at the card too, what's your main event?
I mean, for me, I would say,
see the fact that we're
I think it's Bullet Club Gold versus FTR. If I had to pick.
An 8-man tag with nothing on the line is your All Out main event?
Yeah, I mean, the rest of, to me, there's not big time matches in here. I mean, I don't think they're going to put the Dark Order in the main event. I think that match will be, I think that'll be towards the end of the night, or maybe they kick it off. I don't know, but I don't think Alex Reynolds and John Silver are going to be main event in this pay-per-view. No offense to them. I like them. No. I think they got great characters. To me, it just makes the most sense to have Bullet Club Gold and FTR because those are in the, obviously the Young Bucks as well. But having those caliber guys finish the show, I think, is the way to go.
I mean, I guess one other option, again, because, we know that, again, Tony Khan caters to wrestling fans, and he kind of,
What, Omega to Takeshita?
I mean, yeah, that's what I'm looking at right here. Not necessarily, again, saying this has got some sort of build. This isn't Wrestle Kingdom 12 or any sort of, highly anticipated. But knowing that these guys, when it comes to the world of wrestling, are that kind of when we watch New Japan. A lot of times we watch New Japan Wrestle Kingdom without following, New Japan all year round because it gives you that UFC kind of thing. There's lots of times where I want to watch a UFC pay-per-view. I don't need to know the build. I just know it's this person versus that person, and I know they're going to put on a good show. They're going to put on a good fight. These guys, they're going to put on a good wrestling match. The storyline may not necessarily be 100% there. It might be a little forced. It might be a little rushed. But
I got one for you though. I'll take this. I'll say Orange Cassidy and Jon Moxley start the night because if you haven't noticed on Dynamite, I feel like Orange Cassidy starts every Dynamite.
Yeah, and Orange Cassidy actually put on a pretty good promo this week on Dynamite as well. But yeah, I guess that's the issue. There is no clear main event. There isn't any, and when I mean no clear main event, that doesn't mean in a good way. There's sometimes WrestleMania cards don't have a good clear main event because there's so many big time matches. That's not the case here. Yeah, we're not saying should it be Brock and Bobby who closed the show or Rock and Cena. That's not the case here. It's should it be a meaningless 8-man tag match or should it be a meaningless singles match essentially, or should it be a meaningless regular tag team match? With Blackpool Combat Club and Eddie Kingston. With Shibata, we don't know or what it should be essentially to main event this show. There is no headlined singles championship on the line. The Ring of Honor World Championship is on the line. I believe that the main event probably would have been something with CM Punk and his Ring of Honor, his AEW Undisputed or whatever he calls, with the big NWOX spray painted across it. It probably would have been that.
The real world championship.
The real world championship. Yeah, it probably would have been that. But it's not. And, the Samoa Joe match, that's for the Ring of Honor World Television Championship. So we're not even putting the Ring of Honor World title on the line here, anything like that. I won't lie. AEW, I think they're at a point, and this pay-per-view shows it, they're really taking the Chicago fans a little for granted. WWE's done it before too. They've taken the fans who sit in the front row and they sold $1 million tickets to go watch that Raw back in Manhattan Center a couple years ago. That was 30 minutes of main event matches and matches that would tape before Raw kind of stuff just because they knew they would spend it to be at the unique venue. Well, I think in this sense, AEW's taking advantage a little bit of the Chicago fans who come out every single time, who always fill those arenas and give them good crowds for these big pay-per-views.
Waiting for CM Punk. Oh, wait, maybe not.
Yeah. And go fill up the United Center and buy these tickets far in advance. Because remember, people bought these tickets far in advance before any matches were announced, and they're expecting that AEW is going to bring it like they always do to Chicago, and we're going to go.
Tickets are still on sale, by the way, for the show. I read that.
I mean, the United Center is very big. Listen, with AEW, obviously the Wembley Stadium thing, that's kind of an anomaly, and I know the Dave Meltzer of the world were saying, London isn't really a starved wrestling market, and I agree. They're not really a starved wrestling market. They get a lot of wrestling. They got a lot of indies. They get Ring of Honor. They just got AEW. They've gotten WWE before. They've got Impact. They've got all that. But they're not starved, but they're pretty hungry, okay? And I think the All In show, I mean, let's be clear, if AEW was – there's a reason AEW picked London to try to pull this big crowd, because when they came back home, if AEW was so hot that they could have drawn 81,000 paid anywhere in the world, well, then they would be doing it. Dave Meltzer once said if WWE could have got 30,000 for Money in the Bank, they would have done it. Well, Dave Meltzer, I'm going to go down and say if AEW could get 80,000 anywhere in the world, not just Wembley Stadium, if they could just get these stadium crowds anytime they want, or at least, a few times a year, they wouldn't have waited till Wembley. They would be putting this at Wrigley Field if they could, right? They're not.
They're not going to.
There because they know their limitations. We saw this past week at the Now Arena in Homestead Estates outside of Chicago. A lot of tarped off seats. We've seen when AEW Dynamites have come into small markets like Rochester, New York, some tarped off seats, okay? They can deliver. They can get good crowds for big-time pay-per-views. I imagine the United Center is going to have, good 15,000. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a good crowd. That's what WWE would draw, right? But let's not pretend that AEW got 81,000 because that's just how hot of a product they are anywhere in the world. It was a special circumstance, special place, big debut. I know they're going back there next year for that. It's going to be very interesting. But again, they're going to try to probably build it up as a big time event again and probably starve them a little bit leading up to it so that they don't just get bored with AEW coming to town every week. But if AEW could draw 40,000 for All Out, at Soldier Field in Chicago, they'd be doing it, right? They're not doing it, because of that reason. And they are drawing a big arena. They're drawing the United Center. Out of the three major arenas in Chicago, it's the biggest one. They're going to draw a pretty big crowd. But I think
this card looks like good Dynamite. This to me, this looks like a decent Dynamite. I mean, I know there's 9 matches, but still, it's like who you're putting together and everything.
And there's not really, I mean, to be honest with you, talking about, we talk about the AEW TNT championships on the line, Darby Allin versus Luchasaurus. I think that'll be entertaining. But when it comes to just the straight predictions for the show, we don't even really need to go that far because, I mean, maybe Jon Moxley beats Orange Cassidy. Maybe Ruby Soho beats Chris Statlander. I mean, it's going to be entertaining. Nonetheless, I don't think Shane Taylor beats Samoa Joe. Maybe he does, though, because, again, that's Ring of Honor stuff, and maybe he goes back off into Ring of Honor television.
But is Luchasaurus losing to Darby Allin? I mean,
I could see it. I could see it happen. I mean, Darby Allin had a good showing at All In.
I don't see it because of Christian. I think Christian does something, obviously underhanded tactics, because I bet you there's going to be a point in the match where Darby looks like he's going to win, and then Christian will do his thing, and he'll distract the ref or whatever the case may be, and he'll help. I think Luchasaurus still retains.
I guess what I'm saying is there's no necessarily, fun in picking this card, because good news is for those who like cards that can go either way, this one can go either way, just because in really none of these matches is a lot on the line. I would probably say Better Than You Baby versus the Dark Order's got a lot on the line based on that storyline. Obviously, if Adam Cole and MJF lose the tag team belts, then clearly we're going to see that dissemination between them two probably happen sooner than later, right?
Mox and Cassidy's about it, though. Mox and Cassidy's probably it.
And if Cassidy beats Mox or Mox beats Cassidy, what are we really moving the needle? Is that really taking the company in a whole new direction? I don't think so. So that's why these results are not necessarily going to be surprising or earth-shattering, whichever way they go. Should be an all right pay-per-view, but yeah, definitely one of the least anticipated. And AEW did that to themselves, but we'll see if they try to make up for it and putting on a pretty good card nonetheless this Sunday at the United Center in Chicago.